Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Today is Thursday, August 6, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Today is the 61st anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. We'll see how much has changed since President Lyndon B signed it into law. And trust me, this is one of the reasons why there's a bullseye on the back of black Americans, because the MAGA GOP absolutely despises what this law has done to advance black political power. Governor Wes Moore is, of course, in the news. He signed legislation placing a constitutional amendment on November's ballot that could pave the way for Democrats to redraw Maryland's congressional map and wipe out the one Republican seat. Louisiana's Attorney General, the MAGA Attorney General, Liz Burrell, is blocking more than $800,000 in compensation for a black man who was wrongfully convicted, and she is actually trying to put him back behind bars. And he was in prison for 42 years. We'll have the second part of the 10th annual Power of the Sister Vote poll, which breaks down just how much black women trust the government. A recent lawsuit involving Chadwick Boseman's family suing his wife for his estate has stirred up bigger concerns about black folks not having a will. We'll talk to an attorney and author of A Matter of Life and Death, How to Handle Family Affairs. Folks, that and more. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
I am not going to stop explaining to you how MAGA is trying to destroy black progress. This war on black America is real. It is a war when it comes to voting rights, when it comes to housing, when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to education, economics, social justice, you name it. And today's the anniversary of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, signed into law 61 years ago by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, the reason that's important, because when you look at Project 2025, look at the attack, they are zeroing in on the three Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s, the 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, 1968 Fair Housing Act. When you look at how they are wiping out disparate impact, that's all because of it. When you heard folks like Charlie Kirk literally say 1964 Civil Rights Act was wrong, there's a reason they're saying that. Because the right believes, the MAGA right believes, that the downfall of America began with the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act, and the 68 Fair Housing Act. Now understand, when the Voting Rights Act, which had to have been reapproved every 25 years, it was never a contentious vote. It was literally damn near unanimous. Republicans did not oppose the Voting Rights Act in major ways. You look at the vote when George W. Bush signed it into law. No big issue. So what happened? What happened for Republicans to all of a sudden go to war against the Voting Rights Act? Easy. A black man becoming president. It was the election of then Senator Barack Hussein Obama that said, oh, hell no, we can't have this. So what then happened? Shelby County, Alabama, began to sue. It was Shelby County versus Holder. And what they said was they felt it was unfair that states that had a long history of racial discrimination in voting had to get pre-cleared by the Justice Department, and other places did not. So they sued. The Supreme Court ruled in their favor. And what then happened was, that was Section 4. And what then happened was these southern states raced to change voting laws. Because no longer would the federal government have to approve any changes. Now let me explain to y'all when we say changes. Literally, if these states that had a history of racial discrimination when it came to voting, they could not change a polling location. They could not change the time of the polling location. They could not make any changes when it came to voting unless it was pre-cleared by the Department of Justice. They said, we have got to wipe this out. And a right-wing Supreme Court let them do it. Now understand what Chief Justice John Roberts said. He said, oh, well, if you look at the voting numbers and you look at how black people have been voting over the last 30, 40 years, you're seeing how well they're voting. So there's no need to have pre-clearance since their numbers are tremendous. The reason the numbers kept going up was because there was pre-clearance of the Justice Department. But John Roberts had always despised the Voting Rights Act. When he clerked for Rehnquist, they wanted to get rid of provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Now, so you had that case. Then you had another case that dealt with the Voting Rights Act out of Arizona that dealt with Section 2. Then you had Louisiana versus Clay this year. What you have to understand is that they know they could not completely eradicate the Voting Rights Act. So they can't rule it unconstitutional, even though Clarence Thomas would love to do so. Sam Alito would love to, Alito and Thomas would love to get completely rid of the Voting Rights Act. Others are like, no, we can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick it apart. We're going to euthanize it. We're going to render it impotent. And case after case after case after case after case, that's what they've done. Why? Because of this right here. This is why I wrote the book September 2022, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Because see, y'all, the election of Obama caused them to go, oh, shit. Then as they looked at black turnout, and then the Congressional Black Caucus becoming the largest caucus of Democrats in the House, then all of a sudden, they looked at black political power on the state level, county level, city level, school board level, and they saw where you had all of these black folks who were in office and these black folks who were now making decisions. They were like, oh, no, we can't do this. We can't do this because, see, now, not only are they having political power, they're wielding it. And by them wielding the political power, what I mean by that is, they said they're now driving economic power. And they're driving economic power, educational power, they're driving social justice. We're going to lose control of this country. They understand that the greatest growth of black people, they're in the South. Those are the Confederate states. So they said, no, 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 we cannot in any way have these Negroes gaining more power. They don't care what LBJ had to say when he signed it into law. They don't care that Republican presidents signed the law reauthorizing the Voting Rights Act. Their whole deal was the best way for us to destroy Black America is to attack the very thing that has given them political power. Now, let me be perfectly clear. African Americans coming out of the 1960s made a mistake. If you go back and study the Gary Political Convention, the mistake that they made was they felt that political power was the pathway for Black folks. No, it was political and economic. But you had the likes of Maynard Jackson, Coleman Young in Detroit, Jackson in Atlanta, Hatcher in Gary, Indiana, Stokes in Cleveland. You had these Black mayors in these cities, Marion Barry in D.C., who were using political power to create economic opportunities for African Americans through set-asides, affirmative action program. Reagan gets elected in 1980. Reagan attacks those programs. The Supreme Court begins to chip away at those programs. And they said, we got to go for the whole ball of wax. I'm walking y'all through this because I believe that too many Black people, too many seasoned saints, too many middle-aged Black people, too many Gen X Black people, too many Black millennials, too many Black Gen Zers, too many Black Gen Alphas have no understanding of the history of the Voting Rights Act, what it took to get the Voting Rights Act, simply take the vote for granted, not understanding why they were so afraid to let Black people vote. They were afraid to let Black people vote because they knew exactly what was going to happen, because we actually had a real-life example of what happens when Black political power is being used. Now, see, some of y'all are sitting here going, wow, I mean, what you talking about? Oh, stay right there. Luckily, I brought this with me. He gave it to me when I was at his golf tournament over the weekend. Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina has a new book out. It's called The First Eight, A Personal History of the Pioneering Black Congressmen Who Shaped the Nation. Clyburn is the 9th Black member of Congress from South Carolina. His book is about the first 8. Go back and read about Robert Smalls. Go back and read about the Black folks who in Mississippi and all these states. Do y'all understand the reason you have taxpayer-funded education in America is because of Black people? It was those freed slaves of African descent who understood the power of education, so when they got elected, they began to change the law, change the Constitution. A majority of the South Carolina legislature were Black folks. The reason there was a Mississippi Constitutional Convention in 1890 because the white racists were so mad that Black folks kept getting elected, and in 1890 they said, no, we cannot let these Negroes vote. End of Reconstruction was about that as well. When the white folks overthrew the Black elected officials in Wilmington, North Carolina, that was about white power. The election of 1876 brings the Great Compromise of 1877 that leads to the 92 years of Jim Crow. So the battle with Brown versus Board of Education and Supreme Court cases out of Texas that Thurgood Marshall and others fought. And then Emmett Till being murdered August 28, 1955. Rosa Parks taking a seat, but that was already planned by Joanne Robinson in the Black Women's Political Council. They understood it was about the power of the vote. They understood that the ballot was critically important. Maynard Jackson's grandfather told him the 3 B's: the ballot, the book, and the buck. Let me say it again. Maynard Jackson's grandfather, I think his last name was Dobbs. Maynard Jackson, born in Texas, Dallas, native Texan. His grandfather said, son, the 3 most important things for our people are the ballot, the book, and the buck. Let me say it again for the people who some now don't quite understand what I'm talking about. He said, the ballot first. Because by maximizing the power of the ballot, they impacted the book by putting into laws public education. And so if you get the ballot first, then the book, then you're going to get the book, which is money. So if anybody needs to understand, and today I'm wearing my Jack Yates High School vote shirt, if anybody needs to understand why we spend so much time on this show trying to walk through and teach y'all about the power of voting and why we must vote and why we must maximize our vote, is because you have to connect the ballot with the book and with economics. Because in the history of America, black folks were frozen out of corporate America. And so black folks were able to get government jobs, federal, state, local. And also by having political power, force corporations to do what's right. So what I need for this generation to do is stop these bullshit, asinine conversations that I see on social media where these folk listen to fools who say, your vote don't count, your vote don't matter. You got folks who are black who say that, yet you cannot show me a single white activist, white professor, white person who will say the same. Because they know and understand there's something that is tremendously powerful about that vote. They know full well that when you use that vote and when you wield that vote, it literally scares the hell out of them. And so here we sit 61 years later, and they're doing all they can to limit, to twist, to challenge all sorts of things. Trump wants his law put in place, the so-called SAVE Act. They want all those things put in place. Because y'all, they are scared of us. Because they have seen with their own eyes on 2 previous occasions. They saw it in the aftermath of the Civil War, during Reconstruction, and they saw it in the aftermath of this law being passed 61 years. When in Alabama, we doubled our turnout. When they saw how we was just, y'all, when I was in Mound Bayou, there's a picture there where they said when they were passing out voting applications, it was almost a riot trying to grab theirs. People need to understand what is going on here. People need to understand that when we talk about the Voting Rights Act, we should literally treat the day of the Voting Rights Act as if it is actually the true birthday of America. Because prior to the 1965 Voting Rights Act, America was not practicing democracy. We can cite the founding fathers, but the folk who fought to make the 65 Voting Rights Act real, those of America's true founding fathers. Because as King said, America, be true to what you put on paper. And history will forever record that it was black people who forced America to have to look itself in the mirror and say, until you give everybody right to vote, we are not free. My panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Greg, glad to have you here. Also, Avis Jones-DeWeaver, glad to have you here as well. We'll be talking to Avis as well about the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. Their poet, Dr. Larry J. Walker out of Orlando. Glad to have y'all here as well. Larry, you're in Florida, and we've seen massive voting rights cases there. We've seen Governor Ron DeSantis do all he can to restrict access to the ballot. We see a right-wing Supreme Court back him up on his actions. You have a Republican supermajority in that state, and the reason you have a Republican supermajority in Florida, and the reason they control the Supreme Court, is because they understood if we use our political power, we control all levers of government.
Roland, you highlighted some really important historical data points, and obviously pointing to Florida. One of the key things that we should also add is in terms of the state Supreme Court here in the state, which throughout the governor's tenure have really ignored, the elimination of a black congressional district, among other challenges by civil rights organizations and black folks here in the state. And, it's troubling, but is reflective of the society we live in. And I want to make another connection, something you highlighted when you talked about the CBC. You talked about the passage of the VRA. 4 years later after that, you had the select committee that eventually in 1971 became officially the Congressional Black Caucus. I want to highlight that because this idea of black political power is really important. We talk about the CBC a lot and founding in 1971. But the other thing is we connect it back to states, is the CBC essentially was a template, what it meant to consolidate black political power at the federal level. But what it also did is it influenced at the state level throughout the United States other black folks who were eventually over the years being elected to create their own version of a black caucus to once again consolidate black political power. And then as the CBC fought this federal level for equal rights and fairness for black folks, at the state level throughout the United States, your home in Texas, et cetera, you had black folks at the state level doing the same thing. And certainly you see that here in Florida. You highlight that it is now a ruby red state and a supermajority. It was once a purple state, and we've been seeing the political shift as it continues this, as we have this midterms in this election cycle. The other thing is, Roland, as it relates to, when we talk a lot about the CBC, we think strictly about, black Democrats. But it's also important to note as it relates to VRA, Senator Tim Scott, as an example, in South Carolina, who's a Republican, would never have been elected if it wasn't for the VRA. And I think when we have a conversation about VRA and black political power, even if you talk about differences in ideology, this goes for black Republicans who've been elected over the last several decades also. You would not have been voted in because previously we had Jim Crow, and black folks are prevented from voting. So as it relates to when we talk about the CBC at the state level, I said, and the fight for equal rights at the state level through the VRA, This is why you talk about people have fought the dismantling slowly over the last several years to prevent so many Black folks from having power. We see, Minority Leader Jeffries is an example. Eventually, he's going to be Speaker of the House, and you can believe they would do whatever they can, particularly as we, move closer to the midterms, to make sure that never happens.
Avis, when I listen to these people, and let me be clear, we understand the numbers in terms of how Black people have voted. There was a point when Black people voted in a significant way for Republicans, and then Black folks began to vote for Democrats, and then you begin to see the shift. But there's something that people, and Michael Harry and I were talking about this here, there's something that I need Black people, Avis, to understand, and that is if you study American history, wherever Black people vote in significant numbers in terms of party, white folks go the other way. There was a conversation on Jamie Harrison's podcast, Leah Daltrey, Mignon Moore, and others. This is what they said, and I need people to understand what's really going on when we start talking about Black folks and white folks and voting.
And there's some realism that needs to be adopted or acknowledged. When you look at the numbers in presidential cycles, the Democratic Party has not won the white vote since LBJ.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You mean when he said by signing this piece of legislation,
we're going to lose
the South forever?
He was right. We have not won the white vote since LBJ. And the way we have won the presidency is through high turnout among Black, the base, the identity politics, along with a minority of white folks. So if that's the case, then logic says you better invest in the folks who are making the difference for you, because the white folk haven't been won by us since 1964.
And the presidents who've been elected, the Democrats, have openly said that.
Yeah.
But for these voters, I would not have been elected.
And if you believe, as I think we all do, that this is not about us versus them, but it's about creating an environment where we all feel welcome, then you will look at your budgets and say, listen, we do need to get some share of the white vote back, but we also know that we have to heavily invest in the communities that we believe in, Black women, who we know will show up because we have so much
percent
we have so much
every
vested in what we don't. If we don't show up, I mean, we talk about 300,000 women that have lost their jobs since this new administration. So,
So how do we change that in the party's politics? I mean, that's my biggest frustration, and I think all of us, in some extent, worked in or around the 2024 election, and we saw, the party raised almost $2 billion when you think about it, between the party and the presidential campaign and some of the super PACs. But yet we know the end results. We know where the vast majority, even though Black women, 90% turnout, Black men 80 some odd in those spaces, but the percentage of those resources, the consultants that were hired, were not reflective of where our votes are coming from.
The same. It's been
Who was doing the hiring?
Yeah, exactly. It's been the same since I worked for the DNC in 1980, and nothing has changed. Well, I would argue a little bit, slightly differently, because I think that part of the problem is who you do have at the table and who you do have. Right. The budget is the most important part of any apparatus, as you know, Jamie.
Yeah.
And you got to have signature authority. Leah knows this. I know this. You know this, Jamie. If you don't have signature authority, you don't have insight into where all this money is going.
Right. That's right.
And so part of the equation of changing is you got to have somebody in the room on the money. I guess I done told the whole world money.
One of the things, and I wish I would have sat down with y'all and talked a little more early on, is when you do have signature authority, you don't sign it away and give it to somebody else.
Right.
Hello.
And I'm going to be very honest. That is a lesson that I learned, and I learned it too late.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to talk about the money piece later, but Avis, the point right there is when black people vote one way, white folks run for the other way.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely true, and it's absolutely correct. Bishop Daltrey was absolutely right when she said that no Democratic presidential candidate has carried the white vote since the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's absolute fact. This issue that they're talking about, this broader issue though, of investments and where should the party invest in order to be able to pull together a winning coalition. As they mentioned, they've been stuck on stupid with that for years. I mean, come on. They have not, to get a Democrat to win, you need to maximize the vote of your base and get enough of the white vote, absolutely maximize that as much as you can, but you're not going to get the majority. And it never ceases to amaze me the amount of attention that is put on trying to win voters who, quite frankly, aren't interested in voting for you. They ain't into you, boo. There just seems to be this fascination with, can we get some of these Trump voters to start to vote for us? Instead of figuring out how can we maximize the black vote and other voters who are base voters, as well as turning out the white vote that is likely to vote for you. And when you know that you have a demographic that consistently provides for you 80 to 90% of their vote between black men and black women, there is no excuse to continually be stuck on stupid doing the same darn things over and over again, which is, and I will name it, the way I describe it is, their specific investment in the black vote is about a turnout investment. It is not about a persuasion investment. And when I'm saying persuasion, I'm talking about there are people that you need to persuade to say, okay, let's vote. Let's come out and vote. If you're not taking those votes, if you're taking those votes for granted, then you're not really maximizing the capability of how many people can turn out. And it's very disturbing to me to see that. And, Jamie was a former DNC chair. So I don't know what was going on there in terms of what they were talking about, decision-making and authority. But the bottom line here is that there needs to be a culture change in terms of how the DNC operates with their investments as it relates to making sure that they are able to put together winning coalitions. One last quick thing I will say. Yeah, one last quick thing I will say. Let's also remember that though Vice President Harris did not win in this last election, she actually garnered more votes than Barack Obama. She actually garnered more votes than any presidential candidate, save Joe Biden when he won and Donald Trump in that election. And so to me, the problem was they got distracted by trying to go after, once again, white women voters and trying to maximize them instead of really going all out, trying to make sure that they reduce the number of 90 million people that did not vote, especially those that were black.
I think what is required in this moment, Greg, what is required is to have, listen to what Mignon Moore said, what is required right now is to have black folks who are at the table, black folks who are in the room, to decide whether or not they're going to play go along to get along, or are they going to be like our radical ancestors. The reality is, and Bishop William Barber and I have talked about this many times, when Biden was president, they were pushing for them to codify the Voting Rights Act. They said you have to make it stronger. There were black people, black civil rights leaders, There were black people in the United States Senate who did not want to push Manchin, who did not want to push cinema. There were black people who were, no, let's not push Biden on that. Let's wait. Barber, Cliff Albright, we covered the protest that took place in front of the White House of Black Voters Matter, trying to get their attention. Black leadership, Greg, was so happy to be in the room that black leadership did not realize that they were actually on the menu on the other side of town, on the other side of the aisle.
Roland, you're right. American Negro elected political class, and I'm saying American Negro and not African people in the United States, not African American, because I'm talking about a particular ideological posture. American Negro leadership has become increasingly indistinguishable from corporate Democratic Party objectives. God bless Jamie Harrison, utterly worthless as a theorist or a tactician when it comes to the black vote. I think since the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, 61 years ago, what we have seen is an inexorable shift in black elected leadership toward the type of duopoly politics, win by trying to press along the margins of those who have participated to date. It's been a shift in that direction, and it has alienated millions of black voters. And so I think the villain of this piece, it seems to me, isn't black folk who are in the Democratic Party or not in the Democratic Party. The villain is people who have not been organized well. Black Voters Matter, of course, is moving in the tradition in the tradition of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Remember that SNCC was a multiracial coalition grounded in African people. Now, what does that mean? When we look at the battles that we have faced, skin color, of course, is the reason that these white nationalists have been able to hold together their coalition, because they're purebred racists. We saw the addled racist clown Donald Trump today with that bubble-headed Stephen Miller go after birthright citizenship again, including saying that people who are members of, who are born in U.S. territories, if they can get Congress to introduce legislation they can pass, will not be birthright citizenship. So look out, Puerto Rico. And then several other categories, including what they call birth tourism, even though Donald Trump's own miserable ass father was in his mother's womb at 5 months pregnant when she came into the United States illegally. But they're never going to give that up, and that kind of racism holds their coalition together. On the other side, you can build a multiracial coalition, but and one that is grounded in non-white voter participation, but it requires organizing. As William Barber has said many times, Reverend Barber, as people have said all over the South, certainly Black Voters Matters has said this as well, the South isn't red or blue. The South is under-organized. What does it mean to have representation? When you look at that Supreme Court case from 2024, I guess it was, Alexander versus South Carolina, the Conference of the NAACP, they said you have to have, the Supreme Court said you have to assume good faith on the behalf of these racist legislatures who are doing this political gerrymandering. Well, that is what protects whiteness and allows it to cohere under the current interpretation of the federal Constitution. But when you look at Michigan and this week's primary in the Democratic Party, what you see is Dr. El Sayed, who you talked to, of course. When you look at him, he's looking beyond race. Now, he is a man who is hated, who is vilified by racists, and he is a man who has been, too many black people have been duped into thinking comes from a group that is against us. What does that mean? That means that when the elected black elected officials come into that state of Michigan and campaign for a deeply inferior candidate like Haley Stevens, they have committed themselves to preserving the status quo in the Democratic Party, where they get 2 or 3 or maybe 5 crumbs to maintain their miserable petty bourgeois status in exchange for campaigning for issues that the vast majority of people in this country do not support. So what do we have to do? Well, of course, we got to pass the federal legislation that Terry Sewell introduced again last March 2025, to put the floor back under the Voting Rights Act. And we also have to go out there and organize people by speaking to the issues that transcend race, and that will allow us to build a kind of coalition that will transcend ultimately the attempts by the current Democratic Party to block progressive legislation, progressive policy making, because race as a physical category, as a biological category, as a demographic, is used by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party as a proxy for issues and values that don't align along racial lines. And too many American Negro politicians have lined up in the Democratic Party, putting their own individual political, economic interests ahead of the masses of our people, and also other non-Black people who also, if you organize them, will be able to destroy not only white nationalism, but corporate Democratic Party politics as well.
I remember when I wore this shirt right here on the show, go to my iPad, where I said, vote like a Black woman. And you had these Simple Simon Negroes who were dropped the lower third. You had these Simple Simon Negroes who were upset that I wore that shirt. And then they were mad when I wore this shirt right here that said, trust Black women. Well, the reason I wore those two shirts, because if you actually look at the policy, you look at how Black women vote, they're actually voting for a policy issue that speak to Black people. In the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, in the Black Women's Roundtable, in the part 2 of their 10th annual Power of the Sister Vote poll, the new data examines Black women's motivations, political engagement, trust in government, party identification, and the key issues that influence their decisions at the ballot box. Melanie Campbell is President and CEO of the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. She joins us right now to talk about this. Of course, Ava's participating in this as well. She's the principal of New Vote Strategies. Melanie, the thing here, and again, I need people to understand, Black women are not voting Democrat just for the hell of it. What Black women understand is that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are delivery vehicles when it comes to policy resources. And so these sisters are making a decision, how do I best improve my community, my family, and my life? My political choices will do so. What does that poll say today about Black women in their political identification?
Well, thank you, Roland, for having us on. The bottom line for Black women, we 2 weeks ago, and I thank you for sharing it, we released the data around the economic issues. And so today we released issues around our political views, and they're not mutually exclusive. And the reality is, what you're seeing with Black women is that we are very, very clear that this vote in 2026 is really a vote for our determination that we will not allow what has been happening to us for the last 18 months. That's what I see in the overall. And what I mean by that is we're looking for people who are going to address it. We're looking for people who are going to fight for us. With this being, and we were intentional in releasing this, excuse me, the light went out. There we go. Sorry about that. We were intentional on releasing this today because we also took time to learn what Black women's concerns are around voting rights. And most Black women in this poll are saying that they are concerned about it. They're concerned about the attack. They're concerned about ICE, all these kinds of things. But the bottom line is that we, Black women, are showing that we are looking for the candidates, right? And especially younger Black women who, if they identified as Democrat, they also said they were, more than 50% said they were Democratic socialists. So,
well, hold on. I'll stay right there. I want to stay right there. Here's why. Here's why.
Okay.
I have been saying for the last 30, 35 years, you've got to pay attention to demographics. 65 plus African Americans likely identify Avis as Democrats. 55, 64, significant number. Once you start going below 54, it changes. As every day passes and a baby boomer becomes an ancestor, and Gen Alpha and Gen Z becomes a voting age, you begin to see the shift in priorities. And so what Melanie was talking about there, y'all, go to my iPad. This is from their website. Black women are mostly moderate, y'all. That's in the aggregate. But there's a significant shift to the left. It says the ideological center of gravity is moderate, meaning that the total collection of black women in this poll, 48%. 35% identifies progressive, 17% conservative. Yet, when you start now going to the crosstabs, among black women progressives, 42% call themselves Democratic Socialists. 54% of Gen Z progressives identify as Democratic Socialists. Young black women are more likely to identify as progressive, 42%. What that says, Abe, is if you understand this poll, then you understand what happened in Michigan. Then you understand what happened in the mayoral race in Washington, D.C. Then you understand what happened in New York City.
Absolutely, you do. And as you mentioned before, black women are voting on issues and their ideologies reflect those issues. What we also saw when you dig even deeper than that is that those Gen Z black women, those issues that are most important to them is having access to a good quality job, is being able to pay better wages. They are voting largely on their pocketbook. They're voting on being able to have access to health care. And what does that largely align with? That aligns with very progressive policies. So what this really shows you is that black women are very pragmatic voters. They are not voting on a whim. They are not voting to be like someone else who's voting. They're not like influencer driven. They are reality driven. They are their lives driven. They are their pocketbooks driven. And when they find that what they want is being articulated by a specific sect, that is what's going to attract them by generations. Maybe the priorities are a little bit different for boomers, for example. The number one issue priority for boomer women was protecting the social safety net. It's a different stage of life. So if you're looking at, why are black women voting in the way that they are? It's because they have specific priorities that they are looking to protect. And lastly, I would say, as it comes to sort of relationships to the specific parties beyond ideology, Democratic versus Republican, when we looked at that on a 7-point scale, one finding that we had was that though it's not revolutionary to say that the majority of black women are Democrats, define themselves as Democrats, we saw a huge jump in the percentage of black women who identified as strong Democrats this year. That number went up by 17 percentage points. So given everything that we are seeing happening right now, where black women have been completely targeted with what's going on in the job market, pushed out of jobs, targeted by DEI policies being eliminated, black women are seeing who's doing that, and it's making them even more strongly aligned to the Democratic Party.
What this, Melanie, what this also says to me, and I think this is really what's huge, is that what this is going to require, and again, we're about to have a partisan piece right here, but we're speaking still nonpartisan. It's going to require that if you're a Democrat, you're going to have to do what we've been telling you. You can't just solely go talk to the black church mother and say, all right, we good. No, you're going to have a specific targeting of a message to black women 65 plus, then another one to black women 50, 55, 64, then another one from black women 18, 35. When we were in Georgia covering the Warnock runoff, we ran to a black woman who owned a coffee shop. And we were interviewing her, and she said, listen, I'm a woman. I understand reproductive rights, but I ain't having kids. This shop is my baby. So what I care about are taxes. So I'm listening to Warnock and Walker. And this is what these folks don't seem to understand. The micro-targeting of black people has to take place. Otherwise, they're going to lose with sort of this one shot reaches everybody.
Well, Roland, I'm not being political, but I'm going to put my analyst hat on. I've been in this a long time, so I feel like I could be an analyst for a minute.
Right.
When you look at that Michigan race, when I stayed up like a lot of us, political junkies, watching those numbers, I knew that man was getting ready to win. He was winning all over the state. Stevens, I think his name is, never crossed and led. And then when they were saying there was 300 and some thousand votes left in Wayne County, and she was happy, but she didn't win. Why is that? Because something different was happening with black folks in Detroit, because it's still a majority black city, and something different happened. And I think when we get to really getting deep into the analysis of it, it's going to reflect what we saw in this poll. And folks are looking for who is speaking to the realities of what's happening. Black women are looking, whichever demographic you fall, whether you're a boomer or you Gen Z and all that in between, people are looking for who's talking. And not just that, because of the attack against our rights and freedoms, who's willing to fight? Who has more fight in them, right? And that's when I saw that, I said, oh yeah, this guy's got that. And we woke up and that's what happened. And so the Democratic Party, who primarily that's who most black people vote for, if they want to win, they're going to have to figure that out.
No, not figure out.
Real Republican Party.
No, I dare say not figure out, Melody. I think, follow me. Follow me here. Follow me here. That's what I was about to say. I don't mean figure out. I think what has to happen, this is what has to happen. I was just making this point about black caucus members, black mayors, black state reps, black state senators, black school board members. What is going to happen is black political leadership. They are going to have to take your poll, take the Black Men Vote poll, and they're going to have to walk into some meetings, and they're going to have to slam this on the table, and they're going to have to say, y'all going to read this, and then we're about to negotiate, and black civil rights folk are going to have to back them up, and you're going to have other black organizations, because the lack of investment and attention has a negative implication, because if they lose, we lose. I'm looking at public policy. And so this is the moment, and I want two of you to speak to this before I let you go, and I have that you go first, Melanie. This is the moment where black folks, CBC members, are going to have to get some guts. Me and Clyburn spent a lot of time to talk about this over the weekend, challenging these folks at every facet, meaning the DNC, the Democratic Governors Association, the DCCC, the DSCC, the state legislators, Democratic governors, all the PACs, the Democracy Fund, the entire infrastructure, because I have no desire to hear any black elected official bitching and moaning in the middle of October about we don't have the right investment. Where in the hell were you in early August? Melody first, then Avis.
Bottom line is that if you need the black vote, you're going to have to work for it. Black folks have been attacked. You've been talking about it ever since before it happened, talking about Project 2025 to where we are now, and having lived 18 months of an all-out assault on Black America. And so we are fighting for our children's future. I'll be okay. May have a little rough road, but the ones who are coming behind us will not be. And so this is an existential threat that we cannot take and take it lightly. I'm not saying that congressional black members are bad. All I'm saying is here's some information for everybody. It's public information for anybody to use to be able to hear from 1,000 black women, and not just those who identify as African American. We had nearly 14% that represented from the African continent, immigrants, Caribbean, Hispanic. So there's also another layer within this that also helps you identify. We went deeper than we normally would, and being able to try to identify that. For our purposes of being able to develop our messaging, to understand what we need to do, be able to develop an agenda around that for black women, and deal with the time. It's not a pendulum swing moment. This is a generational shift moment on where we will find ourselves in 3 months. This is not going to end. unless we fight back and win, nonpartisanly speaking.
I don't want them to go to the table, Avis, hoping they read it. I want them to go to the table saying, you're going to read it, and then here is the plan of action that we are submitting, and we expect you to allocate the funds. And matter of fact, we don't need y'all putting somebody white over it. We got enough strategists who know how to activate ourselves. That actually was what has to happen, Avis.
It absolutely has to happen because, honestly, as you mentioned, this is how that party helps itself. And if elected officials would do that, it would save the party from itself. It's really interesting to me to just, as a political analyst and political scientist, just looking at the back and forth between, for example, the Democratic Socialists and the quote unquote establishment and the ire there. Well, the bottom line is, if they want to win, they're going to have to figure this thing out. And the way that you figure this thing out is to understand what people are looking for and how can you, first of all, commit to what they need, and also at the same time understand why there has been this expansion over to the Democratic Socialists. And you do that by going in there, getting the data, finding out what is resonating with people, finding out the issues that people really care about, finding out those things that they really want their candidate to say in order for that candidate to earn their vote with regards to policy priorities. We have all of that in this particular survey. So when I mentioned before about the idea of really being able to invest in persuasion voting, it's not so much, listen, these women are going to turn out. I mean, the numbers are high. Black women are more motivated, according to this latest survey, to vote than they were back in 2024. We are ready to fight back. But if you want them to really turn out at maximum levels, do you want to really be able to make sure that they are voting for a candidate at the levels that's necessary in order to take the win? And we know with this Michigan, with Dr. Al-Said, a lot of people are saying maybe this is going to be a more demanding and challenging statewide race. Well, then you need to maximize your vote. You need to find out then, what do you need to say in order to be able to really maximize the number of people who are going to come out and support in this race and all the other races, if that is your strategy. It's not really a thing about necessarily, we just want to make sure that you get out here and win. It's about how do you win? And the thing is, people are at this point tired of seeing, being on their heels. I believe that what's happened is people have witnessed basically a year and a half of being attacked economically, politically, socially. They are attacked, and they want fighters to fight back for them. And we have the roadmap here around what Black women are expecting of potential elected officials for them in the fall. And if they want to win, they need to go there and learn this, read this, and make sure that they are committing to act in the direction that will maximize this specific demographic coming out and supporting them, which would make all the difference come election day.
Folks, go to ncbcp.org, ncbcp.org, to see the results of this survey. Melanie Campbell, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. That's Roland.
Folks, going to a break. We'll be right back. More on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network, including a poll in Texas showing how James Tallarico is doing with Black voters, and also how a Texas Republican is endorsing Tallarico. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. The goal is to get 20,000 people contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents today. Support this show and the 5 other shows here on the Black Star Network, including The Black Table with Greg Carr. Folks, if you want to give you a cash app, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. That's for credit cards as well. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com for other ways to give. Checks and money order. And yes, y'all understand. Y'all, I know I went to the mailbox. Listen, I'm sitting right here. Come on, y'all. This literally, y'all, these are all checks right here. Okay, I'm actually depositing as we're doing the show. Checks and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo, RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back. All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisor company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games. And people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter.
Let me ask you a question. Why do so many people seem to think they know black men so well? What they think we want, what they think we need. Hell, they even tried to tell us why and how we voted, but never had a conversation with us. Never asked us how we felt, what brings us joy, what makes us angry, what makes us scared. How do we live? That's what this show is about. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. We can speak for ourselves. This will be a show where we bring brothers on that you don't see on every other talk show. Nope. Brothers that are doing work in local communities with black men for black communities. We're going to hear each other and try to understand so perhaps we can move forward together. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. Nope. What we need is each other. No translation, right here on the Black Star Network. Check it out.
This is Tamala Mann.
And this is David Mann. And you're watching Roland Martin.
Unfiltered.
When Prince died in 2016, 10 years ago, he did not have a will. When Aretha Franklin passed away in 2018, there was lots of drama over whether she had a will, one that was found in a couch, and what to make of it. 2020, when actor Chadwick Boseman passed away, he did not have a will. Now, Boseman's brothers, Derek and Kevin Boseman, have filed a lawsuit against his widow, Taylor Simone Letward, to settle their legal dispute. The family is asking the court to suspend and remove Chadwick's surviving wife as the administrator of his estate. This type of situation is not uncommon. Recording artists and actors and many other people, white and black, has happened to them. According to surveys from organizations like Caring.com, more than 70% of black Americans do not have a will or formal estate plan, leaving only 29% with some formal will in place. Attorney and author of A Matter of Life and Death, How to Handle Family Affairs, Jahan Crump Gibson, joins us right now. I'm glad to have you here. I'm 57. I literally had a meeting yesterday with an estate planning firm to go over a series of things. Not only what happens to me when I pass away, what happens to this show, to this network, to my assets, to house, art, what happens, who gets taken care of, nieces, nephews. Not only that, the conversation has to be what happens if me and my wife both pass away. And so I'm already saying, okay, who I want as my executor. If that sibling passes away, I've already identified a board of my nieces and nephews who will then handle the estate. For a lot of us, people say, well, man, we don't have anything. But that's not true when you start talking about if you own a home, if you own a car. There are assets that are there, but you also have to deal with the debts that people have as well.
That is so true. And I'm glad, and pardon me, I have a little laryngitis.
It's all good.
Thank you for having me. We hanging in there. But I hope folks follow your lead. And even if you're out there and you don't have a network like Roland Martin, as you said, if you have a house, if you have a car, if you have a Chime account, if you have some clothes, you have an estate, and you need to plan for it. And I think often people think, okay, I'm not wealthy, then I don't have to go through this. But our estates have to go through the same process that Aretha's, Chadwick's, Prince, everyone else's did, and we don't have the money that they do, right? So imagine how much gets eaten away and what's actually left for your loved ones when you don't plan.
So explain to folks what it means when it goes to probate.
Yes, I call probate is the ghetto, Roland, and we want to stay out of it. So probate court handles administration of someone's assets when they've passed away and assets are in their name alone. So what do I mean by that? If you have a house in your name alone, even if you have a will, guess what? It goes to probate court. And probate court is ultimately a process. Some boxes have to be checked, creditors have to be dealt with, and at the end of it, the property can ultimately pass to who you want. Now, in the absence of a will, state law is going to determine who that is, and you may or may not want that, which is why it's so important to get estate planning done.
Again, we start talking about assets. You just talked about if the house is in your name. A lot of people pay no attention to this. So for instance, when I got divorced in 1999, I bought a house. I got married 2 years later. The house is in my name. So you have to have a process to say, hey, anything happens to me, this goes to my wife, or this goes to a family, or this goes to a trust.
That's correct. There's no automatic trigger, right? A lot of people assume, oh, I'm married, so if something happens to me, my spouse is automatically going to get this. They're automatically going to get that, and that doesn't happen. So what you've described, we see on a regular basis. People got remarried. They forgot that the deed was in their name alone. Sometimes people have been married for years, and maybe one spouse wasn't on the home because of, credit reasons. Maybe somebody else's credit was stronger. So husband or wife went on the mortgage instead, and people forget. Sometimes mortgages have been paid off for 30 years. We regularly have folks in their 80s and 90s whose spouses have passed away. They reach out to us to say, hey, I want the deed in my name now. Can I come into the office and I just sign something? And then I have to explain to them, no, I don't care if you were married to them for 50, 60, 70 years. We have to go to probate now to get the house into your name.
Well, one of the things that people also don't understand, and I have heard these examples, somebody got divorced and they never changed their beneficiary. Then all of a sudden they pass away and that ex-wife is like, my name is still on the insurance. My name is still on that. And the new wife or the new husband is like, what the hell? They never changed it.
Yes, we see those all the time. And obviously your specific state law is going to dictate what happens there. I will say in Michigan, which is where I am based, years ago, before they started requiring some things to be in divorce judgments, that exact issue would happen. And people would call and we'd say, there's nothing that we can do about it. The divorce judgment didn't indicate this was what's supposed to happen with the insurance. So if you accidentally left that first spouse, I don't care if you've been remarried for 30 more years now, unless the first spouse, out of the kindness of their heart, is going to give the surviving spouse and kids, because we've seen that too before, money, then that spouse that's left behind is out of luck. And I'm sure you can imagine how often someone is going to give up money that's coming to them, just out of the kindness of their heart.
Talk about this, and we this is happening with the Bosemans. We've seen this with other folks, and you talked about with kids. This happens a whole lot, where kids are entitled. They feel as if they get a say-so in assets. Does that will, trust, or that estate, can you put provisions in place to say, because I've seen this before, where if any of y'all sue, y'all ain't getting nothing. Because part of the reason for it is to make sure you're not dealing with these ridiculous fights later. And people need to understand, I don't care if you ain't got much money. There's nothing worse than damn families acting a fool, fighting over your stuff when you gone.
100%. And what you're referring to as a no contest clause, we can absolutely write those into documents to say, hey, if you come with some silliness after I'm gone because you didn't like what I did, you're going to be disinherited. So we draft those all the time to try to discourage folks. Now, does it work? Sometimes people still step forward and try to bring claims, but that no contest clause comes into play. And we've had that happen with several estates before. Youngest daughter was mad because the oldest daughter was left over everything, or or she was mad because she wanted to see the will right now, and they're still riding in the car to put dad away in the cemetery. And because she didn't get it when she wanted it, she goes and calls a lawyer, files something in court, and then ends up discovering later on, I filed something in court. There's a no contest clause. And, a lot of times those are upheld in court.
Boom, FAFO. Questions for my panel. Greg Carr, you first.
Yes, I'm listening because it's far too common, as you know, Attorney Crump Dixon. It's just far too common for our communities to have this situation. I want to ask you very specifically about elements of an estate that are should be targeted, or there's a desire to target them for the public good. For example, I have a substantial personal library that I'm now beginning to think about where I want it to be, to rest. I've seen too many of our historians, not just academic historians, professional historians, but community historians, lose their collections because family members did not value those collections the way that the general community did. Not just books, but records and other archival materials. Any insight and thoughts on how those who have assembled material devoted to the study of our people, that they want to see end up a certain place, maybe a university or a community center or a public library or some other form? Any thoughts on how that specific kind of objective should be pursued in estate planning?
Yes, that's a wonderful question. And I say the best possible way to handle that is through a trust. A trust in general is the best possible way to avoid probate court. I will never tell someone that's 100% probate court proof, but that's the best possible way. I compare a trust to a flower vase, right? And your flower vase is holding your assets. Your house is a flower. Your car is a flower. Your bank account is a flower. Those materials that you just discussed are a flower. So as long as we make sure that the flowers are in the vase, we can leave instructions for where they should go, and it should not involve the court, right? So one of the things that we have to do first is make sure that it's in writing. So it's in the trust, we set it up, the language is clear, it's going to this community center, this university, or this specific department, this is what should be done, whatever it is, and then making sure we take the extra steps to make sure that it's actually assigned. So a lot of the things that you just described may have intellectual property rights, right? There might be some copyright associated, there might be some trademarks, there might be some royalties, right? Licenses, other things like that. So the first step of the process is making sure, set up a trust and make sure the wishes are very clear. The second step is making sure that we're checking one by one to say, okay, this archive did make it into the trust. This specific collection that I have, this art that I have that I came up with, this collection of stories that I came up with that I have copyright protection on, I made sure that I took the extra step to make sure that made it over into the trust as well.
Let me actually, to piggyback on that before I go to Larry. Is it possible, as opposed to how it's normally done, because I remember there was it was some guy, some rich dude who gave Leonard Leo some $1.5 billion in stock, but the guy ain't dead yet. Is it possible to, let's just say if Greg says right now, I'm going to give my book collection, my archives, to this entity, but it will stay in my possession until I transition. And so then for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, he has it, but it's already well established where it's going. Is that doable?
Yes. Yeah, so what you're describing is essentially what we call a life estate in the legal world. So you're maintaining whatever it is right now, and you still technically have control over it, but if something happens to you, it's going to pass to whoever you name. And you can do that with the materials that we were discussing. You can do it with a house. You can do it with other things. So it's totally possible to decide right now what happens and then still maintain control over it and keep it in your possession.
Larry?
Yeah, so my question relates to, we're increasingly seeing, Black people who are born here, U.S. citizens, and deciding maybe they're going to live abroad as expats. And, I'm wondering what kind of challenges that may cause if perhaps an individual passes away, but is still a citizen here, maybe has some property here, but they've lived abroad for a certain period of time?
That's a wonderful question. So if they don't have a plan, unfortunately, probate may be necessary in the U.S., right, in the state where their property is, and also abroad where they live. And we've had this issue come up with folks that, were abroad in South America, Canada, overseas in Europe. And what ends up happening, unfortunately, is that people, especially when they don't have a plan, have to end up probating assets in all these different places. And I'll take a step back from overseas. Actually, a lot of times that happens within the U.S. So I may open an estate and somebody had property in Nevada, or also Alabama, also Georgia, and especially if it's land, right? We talk about this heirs property that exists a lot in our families. That has to be probated where it's located. So oftentimes when people are not planning, whether it's abroad or whether it's here and in multiple states, when you're not planning, that just creates more of a disaster, essentially. So regularly we have to hire lawyers in other countries, right, and coordinate with them when we're dealing with someone that has passed away and may have citizenship there or here or assets in both places.
Avis?
There's times in which we're having conversation maybe with some elders in our family, and we are trying to convince them to move forward with this planning, and it's maybe difficult to get them to face this reality, to plan ahead. What suggestion might you have for individuals that might be a caregiver or might be working with an elder in their family who have not taken these steps? What might you suggest can be said to try to convince them to move forward and make this step a necessary thing that they do without them feeling like this is some sort of way of them acknowledging that, okay, I'm not living forever, I have to prepare.
Right. Right. This is an issue that we deal with all the time. And the seasoned saints, as I call them, it's getting older isn't easy, right? You're dealing with a lot of stuff. You're having to face your mortality. And the biggest thing that we find with the seasoned saints is they don't want to feel like they're losing control. So the way you should approach the conversation is in such a way that you're saying, hey, listen, you're still the captain of the ship. You're still controlling things. We just want to make sure that whatever you want goes. So let's make sure we put some plans in place so that it isn't falling into the hands of someone else, or someone else isn't deciding, whether it's a family member or a judge, who's controlling your affairs, what happens with your things. So we often say just lead with that. Make sure you're saying you still have your independence. This is your stuff. I don't have a dog in the fight. I just want to make sure that your wishes are followed. And sometimes, this ends up happening a lot, we tell folks, listen, maybe bring the seasoned saint in for a consult with a qualified estate planning professional, because sometimes you can, beat the dead horse and talk to that relative and tell them every day, mama, you got to get your stuff together. You have to. And they're not going to listen to you. And all of a sudden, when they come in and talk to me, it's like manna from heaven, and the gates open up, and all of a sudden I want to do my plan. So sometimes it helps to have a third party also kind of back you up as well.
One of the things, Jahan, when I was in my meeting yesterday, they talked about how you also have to, in your estate planning, lay out your medical decisions. Do not resuscitate. Lay out instructions if I am incapacitated. Do these things. That is often done so you're saving your family members from having to make an extremely difficult decision. I know someone whose mother was ill, and they amputated one leg, and then they amputated another. They're about to amputate, and finally one daughter was like, listen, enough, let mama go. And one sister didn't want to do it. And I remember one of my aunts, when she was like, listen, I'm tired, I'm ready to go. And again, we want to hold on. And I said, listen, our dear brother Clarence Jones, who's Dr. King's attorney, Clarence was like, man, listen, I had a hell of a life. I'm ready to go. And he literally stopped eating. And he was like, enough. And they put him into hospice, and he passed away shortly thereafter. But he was like, enough. So talk about that this estate planning is also part of that, while you're still here, you leave instructions in terms of how you want to transition.
Thank you so much for that, Roland, because I always tell people just say estate planning is only about death. It's only about death. It's about living. People are living longer. They're not necessarily right in the best position to handle their own affairs, or they may get to a point where they can't make decisions for themselves. So in steps, medical directives, powers of attorney, the term of art is going to differ depending on the state that you're in, but they all do the same thing. And when you do those things, when you put those things in place, you cut down on exactly what you talked about. Now, that doesn't mean that the sister won't be mad and won't have anything to say, but the medical staff at the facility has clear direction on what should happen. So in Michigan, we call those living wills, right? So your living will is going to say what happens if I'm in a persistent vegetative state or if I'm in a coma. How long do I want to be in that state before someone's able to withdraw life-sustaining treatment? Some people say, I don't want to be in that state for 5 seconds. Other people say, freeze me and keep me alive forever. Do whatever you have to do. The last thing you want is your children or your siblings or your spouse and your parents, because we've seen all of the above arguing and bickering, and we've seen this stuff go to court with what should happen. Sometimes people also can't make the tough decision, which is understandably so, especially when you don't know what mom, dad, or whoever wanted. Should I pull the plug? I don't know. And then some relatives can't make that decision. And unfortunately, sometimes hospitals have to go to court and get orders to take people off. And you want to avoid that. So make sure that you're going through that process. And that's why you want to go to a qualified estate planning attorney, because they're going to do exactly what yours did in your meeting, Roland. We're not only talking about who gets your stuff, we're talking about what do you want to happen if you get into this type of state? Who is going to make the decisions? And the same thing goes for your finances. When you're sick, the bills still got to get paid. The utility company still wants their money. Mortgage company still wants their money. Uncle Sam still wants his taxes. Somebody has to be able to handle that. And if you don't put the proper powers of attorney in place to empower someone to do that, then you have to go to probate court. So probate court exists for dealing with people's stuff after they passed away, but it also exists for handling people's affairs that can't do it because of some sort of illness. And there is a huge increase in the dockets for guardianship and or conservatorship proceedings. Term of art depends on your state, but it's a huge uptake because people miss that step. They're so focused. Maybe they did do a will or do some other stuff, but they completely missed what happens if I can't participate in my own medical decisions or handle my financial matters anymore.
All right, last question for you. When Reverend Dr. E.K. Bailey was alive, he had battled cancer. His cancer, he was in remission, then his cancer came back. And he stood before the church and he actually gave a sermon, and he said, let me make it perfectly clear. I'm picking my successor right now. There are not going to be any deacon meetings. There are not going to be any boards of trustee fights. He said, we ain't doing none of that. This is who is going to be the senior pastor when I leave. He was on staff. He had anointed Brian Carter, my alpha brother, Larry and Greg's too, and said he gonna be the pastor. And that Sunday after he had passed, they actually replayed that sermon in the church, and Brian Carter is still the pastor there. You set your estate up. You set it up. Should you convene a meeting of your family and say, all right, sit down, but discuss my estate. Let me be real clear. I don't want to hear no bullshit, okay? You might be the oldest child, but it's going to be her. You might be a man, you might be the oldest boy, but it's going to be him. You know what? It ain't going to be you, my son or daughter. It's going to be my grandchild. Should you have that meeting?
I say, when possible, yes. It should not be like the movies when, the people come to the lawyer's office behind the mahogany desk in the fireplace and they turn around and say, oh, surprise, you're the one that's handling this. You're the one that's handling that. We don't want to do that. We don't want folks to be surprised. You may pick somebody that doesn't want to do the job, right? Or feels like they can't, right? So you don't want to wait until you're gone and then someone figures out here's what's happening. So I say whenever possible, do it. Some folks just aren't comfortable with the conversation, Roland, for whatever reason. Some folks may not be safe. They may think they may have the conversation with their kids and end up on an episode of Snapped or 48 Hours or something. So I say, if you are safe, if you will be okay, and there are not some sort of weird dynamics, then go ahead and have the conversation. It shouldn't be a surprise. Let folks know who will be the point person. Molly's going to be handling the finance audiences. This is going to be handled my health care. I don't want to hear it. These are my decisions. We're done here. So I always say when possible, do it. That also can help with challenges later on. You can't necessarily get rid of them all the time, but we often have folks coming up in probate court saying, yeah, I see this document, but I don't think mama did this, right? And then they're trying to challenge wills or challenge trust. Well, if mama actually told you what she was going to do and it's in line with what's in her document, that can help down the line. So I highly recommend it when possible.
Man, if y'all would look at some of these chats, some of these comments in the chats, they got some funeral stories. Listen, this is not an ad or a promo, but I keep this in my bag. Jahan, you need to do this. Tamala Mann and David Mann told me about this. It is called Singer's Professional Strength Throat Spray. It tastes horrible. It tastes horrible.
Okay.
It is herbal. Okay. Is herbal, but it absolutely helps restore your voice quickly. I literally leave it in my bag. You can go to Whole Foods, whatever, but trust me, forget Chloraseptic, everything else, go ahead and get this here.
If you told me and Tamala and David said it, I'm going in the morning to Whole Foods.
I keep it in my backpack. Y'all, be sure to show her book. This is her book, A Matter of Life and Death. Jahan, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
We come back, we're going to talk about Texas, critical United States Senate race. A big-time Republican endorses James Tallarico, and what's going on with black voters in Texas. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games. People who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter.
Let me ask you a question. Why do so many people seem to think they know black men so well? What they think we want, what they think we need. Hell, they even tried to tell us why and how we voted, but never had a conversation with us. Never asked us how we felt, what brings us joy, what makes us angry, what makes us scared. How do we live? That's what this show is about. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. We can speak for ourselves. This will be a show where we bring brothers on that you don't see on every other talk show. Nope. Brothers that are doing work in local communities with black men for black communities. We're going to hear each other and try to understand so perhaps we can move forward together. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. Nope. What we need is each other. No translation, right here on the Black Star Network. Check it out.
I'm Russell L. Honoré, Lieutenant General, United States Army, retired, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, midterm elections, huge races. One of the places that they're looking at for Democrats, a big pickup would be Texas. Republicans are running the corrupt MAGA Ken Paxton, who is the Attorney General. He is completely anti-black. He is a white nationalist. He has been attacking Harris County when it comes to their voting, attacking DEI. He is totally corrupt. He's running against State Representative James Tallarico. A top Texas Republican has come out endorsing Tallarico. Former Tarrant County Judge Glenn Whitley first showed his support for Tallarico in June when he recorded a radio ad to be broadcast on conservative stations during the Texas Republican Convention. During a recent rally in Arlington, Texas, Whitley introduced Tallarico. He said this.
But I'm going to have to tell you right now, as a Texan, I am ashamed of the fact that Ken Paxton is even on the ballot. I believe him to be the most corrupt politician that Texas has ever seen. I picked up the paper this morning and read it, and I saw that in Allen last night he said, I'm excited to educate people about my record over the last 20-something years. Well, let me help him. He has avoided trial on securities fraud charges. He agreed to pay whistleblowers to resolve claims that they had. He was impeached by the members of his own party on allegations of bribery and abuse of office. His divorce proceedings have also received widespread publicity. Somehow he has managed to become a multi-millionaire while serving in public office. Now, he reportedly owns, I think, some 15 homes across this state and this country. No wonder he can't figure out where to vote. Finally, if character, if integrity, and if accountability matters to you, and if having someone who will work for Texas and not for himself, then we must elect James Tallarico in November.
A new Texas Southern University poll shows 79% of African Americans are in support of Tallarico in Texas. 12% of black people are voting for Ken Paxton. What the hell is wrong with those people? Despite the support, frustration with the Democratic Party remains high. A separate Texas Southern University Barbara Jordan Public Policy Research and Survey Center survey found 77% of black Texans believe the party takes black voters for granted. 80% also believe race played an important role in why non-black voters supported James Tallarico over Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in the Democratic primary. Still, Crockett's loss does not appear likely to hurt black turnout. Just 7% said her defeat makes them less likely to vote in November. Tallarico currently holds a 47 to 45% lead over Paxton statewide. Even in the Fox News poll, he has a 3-point lead over Ken Paxton. And if y'all want to really crack up, man, Sean Hannity was not happy about that. He was beside himself. And I get a kick out of and understand in the polling world, Fox News polls are considered some of the best polls, if you will. And so this was hilarious. This was an exchange between Sean Hannity and former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio. Listen to this, y'all.
The general election too.
Well, let me ask
Sean,
you this,
these folks are going to win in November.
So you think cisgender Tallarico, who believes God is non-binary, that believes biological men should play women's sports, and believes that biological men should have access to abortion.
Did you read your own poll today where Tallarico's beating Paxton?
Okay, I don't believe it for 2 seconds.
Oh.
Okay, so you don't believe your own poll, but if your own poll, Avis, was showing that Paxton was beating Tallarico, you would be trumping it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see how he's trying to deflect to divisive politics. One thing about the Republicans, they play the same tune every election. They're trying to figure out who are we going to make the boogeyman in this election, and they play to people's fears in order to win votes. Because let's just face facts. What else do they have to run on? Paxton is this person who has all of these horrible background that was just laid out by a fellow Republican. And so they can't run on his record. They can't run on the things that he did while in office. They can't run on the fact that apparently he let a pedophile go, because that's going to remind people about what's going on right now with the Epstein files. So they can't run on any of the substance. So they have to talk about less than 1% of the population and somehow make people afraid of them in order to try to get the vote, while at the same time ignoring the fact that their own polls are telling them it's not working. It's not working.
Before I go to Larry and Greg, I remember you did a video a few weeks ago where you had some, let's just say, tough words for supporters of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who were stirring people up on social media saying that we should just go ahead and let the white boy lose. I did my own discussion on this show where I said, if you are black and your ass don't live in Texas, shut the fuck up. Because my parents are there, my brothers and sisters are there, my nieces are there, my nephews are there. And Ken Paxton will be in absolute danger to black Texans. And by defeating Ken Paxton and voting for James Tallarico, then we literally are putting Democrats in a position of controlling the U.S. Senate, which means we can block the Trump's agenda. Control room, get that soundbite ready where Mike Johnson said if they lose the midterms, the Trump presidency is over. That, to me, is what people have to pay attention to. This is what is called playing the long game. If they pick up, if Democrats hold Michigan, hold Georgia, win North Carolina, let's say win Maine or Iowa or Alaska, and they win Texas, they'll have 51 votes. That means Trump can't name one person without Democrats voting for them. If anything happens to a Supreme Court justice, Democrats don't even have to call a hearing, and I absolutely would tell them, don't call a hearing. Tell them, go call Mitch McConnell, ask him what he did to Obama. And so it's stupid, even for the 7% of people who voted for Crockett saying, I'm not going to vote. No, what the hell are you thinking? Avis, go ahead.
Okay. Well, it does make me wonder what the hell are you thinking? I mean, because clearly these people have no good, not only do they not have no good intentions for you, they are actively harming you. And to me, the biggest issue is, as you alluded to, the control of the Senate. We like to forget now that Supreme Court appointees go through the Senate, and you don't need a 60-vote majority for that. You need a raw majority. If we allow the Republicans to maintain the Senate, even if the Democrats are successful in taking the House, then that means that Trump has 2 more years to replace people on the Supreme Court. It's already been rumored that Clarence Thomas may step down, that Alito may step down, allowing him the opportunity to put 2 40-year-olds in their places, which could be there for an additional 40 years.
Wait a minute, Avis, wait a minute. Sonia Sotomayor has diabetes and travels with medical help.
That's true.
I mean, folk need to pay attention.
Absolutely. These will have multi-generational impacts. And so instead of sitting here trying to be cute and say, oh, well, I'm just going to fold my arms up and not vote, understand that you're not only impacting what could happen in your lifetime, you're impacting the negative things that could happen in your children's lifetime, in your children's children's lifetime. Now's the time to man up, to woman up, and be strategic and think about the long game. This is not a plaything right now. This is about our lives. This is about our future. This is about our rights. And if you want to be able to stop that impending disaster that could be even worse than what we're already experiencing with this crazy ass right-wing Supreme Court, then you need to make sure that we are doing everything possible to put into place Democrats in the Senate so that they can control that. And that is critical in terms of making sure that we have Tallarico be successful in breaking the lockhole that Republicans have had in the Senate from Texas.
Here's the thing for me, Greg, and I'm just going to use sports as a perfect example. Let's say this is a football game and your offense is trash. Let's just say you're the Baltimore Ravens and you really have Trent Dilfer as your quarterback. He ain't that good, but you got a kick-ass defense. You know what the defense would tell Trent Dilfer? What my Houston, Texas defense told C.J. Stroud, dog, just don't throw no interceptions and make mistakes. We'll take it from here. We don't need 30 points. we'll hold them to 3 or 7. We don't need you to do much. We have to sometimes recognize that playing aggressive defense is also aggressive offense. And so if someone said, I really want to see Jasmine Crockett win, okay, she didn't. Now what do? So if you said that I wanted Crockett because of her policies, well, how much do her policies differ from Tallarico? Oh, I'm sorry, who actually is the only person running for the United States Senate who Crockett has already endorsed? It's Tallarico. I need black folks to understand that when we talk about the United States Senate, Greg, you might be a senator from your state, but you literally are deciding public policy for the nation and the world.
It's true. And let's take, for example, the senator from Tel Aviv, John Fetterman. He was elected by the voters from Pennsylvania, but he in fact represents B, the international killer in Israel. He is unashamed in that. And when it comes time to retire him permanently from the United States Senate, I hope that the voters in Pennsylvania will dispatch with him fairly quickly. There are only 100 senators in this country, in the United States of America. And at this time, each one of them represents not only the voters of the state they're in, but the special interests who have pumped them full of money, full of influence, full of other resources to do their bidding. And I think that, it's very interesting, Dr. Avis, reading the report that you all have given to us with NCBCP, looking at the top priorities of black women and how they changed between 2024 and 2026 in terms of number of the people who were polled. It's fascinating to me to see what I kind of perceive to be a distinction between what women of African descent who were polled see as priorities when there may be a little breathing room to operate, and what black women see as priorities when it's all hands on deck. Stop the bleeding. In 2024, this is before Bozo is returned to the office, to see reducing the cost of living, making housing more affordable, creating good paying jobs. Number 4, protecting public education and black history. The 5th, fighting discrimination and systemic racism, then protecting Social Security and Medicare. Now, if you go to the poll from this year, there is no protecting public education and black history. Number 1 is protecting Social Security and Medicare, then reducing the cost of living, then fighting discrimination and racism, then bringing down health care and prescription costs. Why? Because black women recognize, look, these white nationalists are after everything. So we must at least fight that battle to preserve the advances we have made. How does that relate to what you just laid out in Texas, Roland? It's very clear. We saw it in Michigan. Now, Melanie's right, looking at the returns, saying, okay, well, I knew that he was going to win. I wasn't at all sure because in Wayne County, many people of African descent were, to put it in the language of the Nation of Islam, hoodwinked, bamboozled, run amok, led astray. Because the politics of the moment have us campaigning on and reacting to our fears rather than our hopes. Now, whether it's Tallarico in Texas, whether it's Dr. El Sayed in Michigan, whether it is the black women who have broken through in places like New York with Avelia Chevalier, or Colorado with the lawyer Malat Quiroz, what you have is people articulating a vision of the society they want to live in rather than just playing that kind of defense. But the problem we have, and this is where the problem really comes in, I think, the problem we have is that too many establishment politicians do not campaign on, do not invest in, do not have a vision of what they want the society to be. What they have a vision of is, how do I advance my little interest and preserve my miserable little piece of real estate, perhaps at the expense of a larger vision. Tallarico was campaigning on a vision. Jasmine Crockett, who is an outsized political talent, who could easily be the governor of Texas, who could easily break Ted Cruz's political back when that seat comes open in a couple of years, who could choose to do any number of things. And let's be crystal clear, the road to the White House more often runs through the governor's mansion than it does the United States Senate or anywhere else. She is best served by continuing to work with a vision rather than we just have to prevent this other thing from happening. And I think that's where the crisis in the Democratic Party is right now, because they're holding on to the fear-based politics. And quite frankly, Black people are tired of that shit. And so is everybody else in this country who has any sense of building a society we want to live in rather than just protecting ourselves from the white boogie people.
Larry?
Yeah, Roland, you highlighted how important this election is. The other thing is, when you talked about the two polls, listen, Paxton's got 9 lives. And the other thing, he's one of the most, if not most corrupt politicians in the history of Texas. But I think the things that worries me is that this even is tied, considering the number of scandals he's had, more than, if you watch a soap opera and some of these scandals and things that some of these characters get themselves into. But what we understand is that we know the Black vote is going to be critical. I know you talked, before about Texas in terms of, the large number of Black folks there and voters. It's not just those Black voters that, we know are committed to voting, but he has to focus on those reluctant Black voters and get those folks out to make sure you have a realistic path to win this important Senate seat. You talked about the U.S. Supreme Court, and we've seen them ravage voting rights and let Trump administration do pretty much whatever they want. And it's important for folks to understand that things could get a lot worse. So Mayer or someone else, decides to retire or has some other serious health challenge that could make what we're facing even far more difficult as we move in the next 2 years to the next presidential election. So it has to be all hands on deck. The last thing I will say, Roland, as relates to this particular, election, as relates to Senate in Texas, is I have faith in Black folks. It is the other groups we've talked about today on other shows that do not vote in their best interests. So those are the key demographics: Latino voters, and we talked about white voters, not historically voting in their best interest, not only at the national level, but in states like Texas. So once again, I have faith in Black voters, particularly Black women. It's the other folks that don't vote in their best interest.
Bottom line is here. Somebody in our chat was asking the question. I can't sweat what the hell Latinos are doing, what the hell white folks are doing. My focus on what Black folks are doing. And my deal is Chadwick needs to win. He needs to be at 85, 88, 90% among Black people. And not just that number, it's also turnout. There are 4.5 million eligible Black people in Texas. If 70% of the eligible Black people vote in Texas, that's 3.1 million votes. Tallarico needs about 5.4 to 5.5 million to win. That means all he has to do is pick up between white people and Latinos another 2.4 to 2.5 million. Let me also remind people, Texas is 61% minority, Latino, Black, Asian American, Native American. Yet 61% of the people who vote are white. That is the difference in Texas. I'm going to move the other stories tomorrow. Greg, you're in Egypt. Tell folks what, and also it's almost 3 a.m. there. We appreciate you staying up late, joining us. People in chat like, man, Dr. Carl don't feel like talking today. I'm like, y'all, he tired. Tell folks what you're doing there.
That's all right. Well, we're here with our annual study tour in Kemet, which is one of the names that people of African descent named the ancient Egyptian civilization. You've got about 70, a little over 70 folks here, including a nice contingent of HBCU students. Shout out to students from Howard University, Spelman College, and North Carolina A&T, including my niece is here. So we're having a good time. A lot of viewers. So there are a lot of people who are up right now at 3:01 a.m. in our various rooms here in the Nile Valley watching. A lot of people in the Bring the Fun fan club. So on behalf of everybody who rides with Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network, I just want to thank you for continuing this fight. It's a lot of people, man, who are saying hello to you. And tomorrow we're going to Abydos, which is one of the major temples here in the Nile Valley, built by Seti I and finished by his son, Ramses II. And, we're serious about this. This is the kind of vision that Black people need to have. We never can forget our history. So, on behalf of them, brother, thanks for keeping the good fight going.
So I've actually never been to Egypt. I was going to go a few years ago, and then let's just say a revolution broke out, so I ain't go. Keep me in mind next year. Love to bring our cameras there and remind me of the dates and everything so we can figure out to return to the motherland. And yes, white supremacist Richard Spencer, Egypt is in the motherland. It is the continent of Africa. But before we go, Greg, I don't know if you, Avis and Larry, caught yesterday's show. The end of yesterday's show, things got really insane with Robert Patillo. Robert decided to grab his flamethrower off of his wall, Greg, and walked us through how to connect his flamethrower to an AR-15. And so Gabby, one of the producers in the control room, she put together this quick meme of Robert with the flamethrower, and so we showed this yesterday. It's an absolutely hilarious segment. If y'all missed it, if y'all missed it, y'all need to go to. If y'all missed it, y'all need to go to the YouTube channel. It's insane. Just give me 30 seconds of it because it's utterly insane. Come on. What the
flamethrower people?
Robert, is that real? Is that real?
Of course it's real. It's a flamethrower.
It looked like a damn toy. Your ass got a flame.
Oh, see, this hooks onto the front of your AR-15. You can actually take this off.
Oh my God!
And hook that to the front of the rifle, so you can flamethrow directly from the rifle.
The revolution will not be televised.
But it will be live streamed.
Somebody in the chat said, "Is Robert high?" It was insane yesterday. And so at the end of the show, Greg done woke up. And so at the end of the show, I said, we're going to have to put this on the T-shirt. So I don't know if they have it ready, but by tomorrow, y'all should be able to get this on shopblackstarnetwork.com. Let me zoom in. It says, Roland Martin Unfiltered presents The Flamethrower, starring Robert Patillo. So this will be available on a T-shirt on shopblackstarnetwork.com. It was utterly insane yesterday, Avis.
Well, he ready. He ready for the apocalypse. He's ready for any sort of war that people be talking about, all these wars, these race wars people be talking about. He ready for zombies. He ready for anything. I'm like, be prepared for everything. Clearly, if something goes down, I'm going to Robert's house.
Larry?
Nah, that's serious. Brother with a flamethrower, that's the first time I've seen that. So he did team up with Will Smith or something.
Greg, that boy crazy.
Yeah, but I tell you, man, sometimes you got to be armed. What did Malcolm X say? I don't know what Ida B. Wells said. She said a Winchester rifle should occupy a place of honor over the hearth of every Negro home. So Robert just channeling that Ida B. Wells spirit, and you got her portrait up there in the studio. So Ida lives.
Indeed. All right, Dr. Carr, appreciate it, Frat. Larry, I appreciate it, Frat. Avis, I appreciate it. Thank you so very much for being on today's show, folks. That is it for us. I appreciate y'all watching us. If y'all on YouTube, y'all should be hitting the like button. Y'all, we should easily get 1,000 likes. So come on. By the time we end this show, let's get 1,000 likes. Do me a favor. You want to support the show, join our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 people contributing on average $50 each a year, $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. Of course, it allows for us to do what we do at all the shows on the network. You want to give via Cash App, use a Stripe QR code. You see it right here. That's also for credit cards as well. Checks and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Samsung Smart TV. If you want to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag, go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Our hats, t-shirts, hoodies, wall art, mugs, you name it, all sort of stuff there. Shopblackstarnetwork.com or the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. Also, folks, if you want to get these products here from our black-owned companies, folks, we got, you name it, our marketplace. We've got golf balls, man. We got candles. We got hair care products, skin care products. We got baking mix, man. We got all sorts of stuff. More than 50 black companies on shopblackstarnetwork.com. So do me a favor, y'all, and go check it out. When you buy products from there, we got black-owned toilet paper and tissue paper. When you buy products from there, you also are supporting this show as well. So shop blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app, fan base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here. Yes, I'm representing my high school. The reason, the colors of the show you see right here, my high school, Jack Yates High School, Houston, Texas, Magnet School of Communications. So this was the JY Vote shirt they gave me. So I'm representing JY, the trade in H-Town, Houston, 3rd Ward. That's how we do it. All y'all who went to Worthing and Sterling and Booker T. Washington and all the other little inferior high schools, Willow Ridge, Madison, I'm sorry. Y'all can't be Yates. And plus, the other thing is, why I also love JY, is why I love wearing the old Houston Rockets colors. Because when Moses Malone was there, it was the same red and gold. I'm going to see y'all tomorrow.